All right, we'll call this meeting together. Order. This is the Public Safety Subcommittee on House File 240, an act removing psilocybin and psilocin from the list of substances classified as Schedule 1 under Iowa's Uniform Controlled Substances Act. This is the third time this bill or concept's been before the Iowa House. I guess my just opening comments, hopefully we want to hear from as many members of the public that are interested in. For people who are in favor of the bill, I think what we'd want to hear about is your personal experience and how you would personally benefit from the substance, and leave anything speculative or research-based. We have another time for that. And then if you're against the bill, I think what we're most interested in is illustrating the criminality that's inherent to the substance. I think that's what would most benefit the Public Safety Committee in making this determination. Those would be my opening comments. Representative Wheeler, Representative Olson, do you have anything?
Let's hear from people.
Okay, so we want to hear from you. If you can keep it to 2 minutes or so, unless you're really interesting, and we'll cut you off when you get uninteresting. So if you want to make your way to the table and just click on the microphone and tell us who you are and what you think about the bill.
Yeah, Rick Stewart from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm really here to just make one point, which is probably a little bit different than other people might make. Psilocybin is going to be legalized by the FDA within about a year. MDMA is going to be legalized by the FDA probably in October of this year. So regardless of what we do here, the FDA says it's okay. We'll say it's okay. But that's not my point. My point is that approximately 520 people commit suicide in Iowa every year. That's 10 per week, okay? So over one a day. 70 Iowa veterans commit suicide every year. MDMA, which is I'm most familiar with, which psilocybin pretty much does the same thing, is a 65% total elimination of PTSD symptoms in the study that has already passed FDA examination. We don't have it legal yet, but that's a very recent study, stage 3 FDA trial, 65% total elimination of PTSD symptoms.
I hate to interrupt you, Rick, but do you have any personal experience with psilocybin?
I would prefer not to answer that question.
Okay.
But I'm not a stranger to it.
That's good to know.
So basically, if we pass this bill and add MDMA to it, as far as I'm concerned, just for therapy use by therapists legally, as the FDA will allow them to do in a very short period of time, we have an 80% chance of saving a veteran's life this week. Every week, an 80% chance of saving an Iowa veteran's life. I see absolutely no reason why this doesn't fly through the subcommittee, fly onto the floor, get passed, signed by the governor, and we start saving lives immediately instead of having any bureaucratic delay, which is only going to cause people to die. Thank you very much.
All right, who's next? Go ahead.
All right, my name's Jenny, and I have been born and raised in Iowa. I'm a nurse. I'm going back for my master's to be able to prescribe eventually for mental health. I came from a dysfunctional family with a lot of addiction on both sides, alcohol, emotional abuse, things like that. So I took those behaviors into my adulthood, which affected me tremendously. History of eating disorder, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and attempt. I'd abuse benzos with alcohol when they were prescribed to me. So about 10 years ago, someone suggested to try psilocybin for such conditions. I was skeptical, all drugs are bad, my dad's an alcoholic, all these things, but I was like, okay, sure, why not? Antidepressants weren't working. I was self-destructive, so I gave psilocybin a try. And after 3 journeys with intention, I completely stopped drinking. My anxiety lessened, depression completely gone. My thinking patterns started to change, eating more healthy, being more active, meditating, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like passing this would be beneficial for a lot of diagnoses, a lot of people in Iowa. Yeah, and that's...
Can I ask you to, so you mentioned the phrase journeys with intention?
Yes.
Could you speak more to that, or maybe give an example of what the opposite of that would be as well?
Recreational kind of reckless use is going to be likely with any kind of medication, but having that respectful, intentional use and wanting to get something out of it, using it like with the right set and setting, having that harm reduction piece is crucial, and I think there's a lot of benefit. And
that was something you were directed to do? Or,
no.
Okay.
No, I just kind of, I was recreational at first. I mean, not like out partying, but just wanting to change what was going on, that depression, that anxiety. So hopeful, I think, was the word, and since other methods weren't working. So yeah, and then a lot of things just fell into alignment. And so I think aside from saving people and improving mental health, I think it would decrease tax dollars for healthcare because my personal health changed, and so avoiding those comorbidities that come with it.
have you had any other exposure beyond those 3 journeys with intention?
Yes.
Okay.
And very, very seldom. I mean, I think with Schedule 1, they're considered, no benefit, addictive, and coming from a family that has addiction on both sides, it's like when you get the message, hang up the phone. So it's not ever something that I would consider addictive.
Then in your experience with the substance, was there any activity, behavior, feeling, or impulse that you would describe as criminal?
No.
Okay, so you didn't disrupt any neighbors, nobody?
No, just me.
Okay.
Just me and music and blindfold, laying in the room. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alex. Since we're not talking about statistics or data, I'll skip that. Personal experience is about, for me, is about what people pay attention to. There is meditation, there's all these techniques to make you stop focusing on the infinity that is reality today, artificial intelligence, constant distraction, dopamine, social media. All of these things are not great for the brain. When you're under these substances, these natural substances, you're able to reinterpret who you are as a person. It is not like alcohol or any benzodiazepines that are numbing who you are as an individual. It is expanding how you interpret who you are as a person and what you're being in the world with other human beings so that you can have better positive feedback loops in your interactions and also be less distressed about the infinite information that surrounds us every single day, which is a reason for the deaths of despair and some of these other things that you're seeing in the world. They're loosely correlated to this environment that we're in. And this is a release valve for that. One of many.
So you've had personal experiences
Yes.
to the effect, and then, I mean, when you're describing the infinity that is reality and reinterpreting yourself within that context, to you personally, would that graduate to, say, a religious exercise?
In some ways, it's very spiritual and meditative in the sense that I focus on the right things after it occurs because I know what the intent is. I know that it's supposed to improve my relationships. I know what it's supposed to do. But people have bad experiences, just like with any drug. If you take something like this that makes you reanalyze your personality and you go out to a party with thousands of people who you do not know, you're not going to have a great experience. But you could say that about any drug.
So have you had those negative experiences under the influence of psilocybin as well?
Extremely rare, and they've been personal. They
Anything-
haven't affected anyone else.
Anything that would graduate to the level of criminality?
No.
Okay.
I laugh because it's not something that occurs on that particular substance.
Good afternoon. My name's Diane Kreidner, and I have had a lot of big T and little t trauma throughout my life, and have had the diagnosis of PTSD, anxiety, depression, unspecified OCD, and then the long-term depression that's just kind of underlying. I would highly recommend people look at the Body Keep Score book, but it talks about how our body remembers everything. And So, you know, I've been in all kinds of different kinds of therapy, talk therapy, Freudian therapy, EMDR 3 different times, just because when an individual is in that much pain and can't get past the trauma that has happened, or tries to get past and then something can trigger them and throw them back, it's a hard way to live. And I think that was his point to vets too. And since I have done this in a therapeutic setting and had that experience with it being guided, and I was guided through it, it has totally changed my demeanor, the things I'm triggered about, my depression, those things. And I still have work to do, and I would like it to be available in Iowa.
Could you give a brief summary of your experience with, I think, would you refer to psilocybin therapy versus other generic therapies that you had been?
Yeah, I
Often.
just think it goes to such a different level in your brain, and it really gets you to see, heal those parts of yourself that you couldn't heal. Stay out of the fear, stay out of the anxiety.
So let me ask you this, and how would you qualify the efficacy of a psilocybin therapy versus other therapies that you'd been offered?
I definitely would take it any day over the therapies I've done. I think EMDR has good intentions and it can work for some people, but some people who have had severe trauma, everybody's different, so I can't speak for everyone, but I definitely think that it has helped me leaps and bounds, and I think it could help thousands, millions of others. So.
Thank you for your testimony.
Hi, I'm Shannon Myers. I'm a counselor, a research fellow, a professor. I've worked with the federal government on this topic. I'm an expert on this topic. I'm a trauma counselor and a root cause mental health provider. I came to psilocybin after complex trauma. I grew up in a cult, a religious cult. I had severe childhood abuse. I've had multiple sexual assaults. I have had intergenerational trauma. My grandfather's a veteran and he never got care, and he abused my father, who abused me. I have multiple traumas. I had 14 different mental and physical diagnoses. I couldn't walk, talk, or speak before psilocybin. I've had complex trauma. I've had PTSD, OCD, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. I tried to commit suicide at age 13. I've had an eating disorder. I've had every single trauma response. I have multiple autoimmune diseases. I'm a cancer survivor. This is all because of trauma. I also am one of the very common that I see in my practice. I cannot take standard mental health medications. I've seen over 50 doctors. I've tried every medication. I am allergic to medications. If I take an antidepressant, I hallucinate. It doesn't work for me. I get all the negative side effects. I take an antidepressant, I shit my pants. I take an antidepressant, I get worse. Psilocybin brought me back to God. Psilocybin brought me back to my family. I'm a mother. I can be with my child. I don't want to kill myself. Every single day I sit with clients just like me. I have served hundreds and tens of thousands of Iowans over the course of my career on various systems change, from school to prison pipeline projects, from working on various initiatives. I run Decrim Iowa with Chad. We have a petition here, over 200 people that have signed this, that want this to happen, people just like me and Diane that have been through the most horrible traumas where nothing else has worked. I am rooted so much in humanity and in just a zest for life. Every morning I wake up and I am ecstatic to be alive. I get to live. I get to be here in this room with all of you. And I had that chance because of psilocybin. I have been an alcoholic. I've been an addict. I've been all of these things. And this brought me back to life. I met my ancestors through this interaction that were the most loving beings that I've ever met, and it reminded me how I could love myself. And I'm here today because I'm one person, but I am telling you there are tens of thousands of people just like me that I interact with all of the time. Typically, I only see maybe 2 people a year that are suicidal. Right now, it's 75% of people in my office that are saying, Shannon, if we cannot access things like psilocybin, I'm gonna go home and kill myself today. That we are not okay. Iowa is not okay. This is safer than alcohol. I have seen no negative side effects, and I have worked with so many people. Please, please, please move this forward. For Iowans, for me.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for that very raw but real display of human emotion, and thank you for shepherding our state through this healing process. Very powerful. I guess before we let you off the hook too much, can you speak to where the FDA is on this? I know since you were here 2 years ago, there maybe has been some progress made on Shannon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was here 2 years ago, and I'll be here every single time Jeff pushes this forward until this moves forward. It's not when, but if. Yeah, this is very safe. This is going to pass through the FDA.
Well, there is a clinical trial undergoing right now over the treatment-resistant depression,
Yep.
or is there a
It's
larger scope to that, or just give us an update on what's
Yeah,
happening?
so it's going to move forward, and so we're going to see after MDA gets the FDA approve it, it's going to be psilocybin that's next, just to his words here. So these are going to be in therapy offices because it's going to be moved forward because it is super safe. And it is so effective. It is 4 times as effective as antidepressants. Antidepressants only work 15% of the time. And antidepressants, just like what I shared, that's happening everywhere. They don't work, and people are traumatized. Depression is the root cause of trauma. And so our nation's not okay. Our Iowans are not okay. This is a safe natural substance. It's going to move forward.
But do you think it's realistic that the FDA might do something by the end of the year, as Rick put forward?
Yeah.
The psilocybin trial just released the first of the 2 studies that are necessary for stage 3 trials, like a week ago maybe. I haven't personally read it, but I know it's been released. They're halfway to the end. It's
Okay.
going to be a year.
Yeah.
Just feel free to keep us apprised of those developments.
Yeah.
And thank you for your
Thank you.
expertise.
I'm Kara Porin. I am the CEO and founder of Integrative Family Medicine. I'm a nurse turned family practice provider, and I'm here to reiterate all of the stories that are here. I see it in every single patient that comes and sit in my chair every day. If I see 16 patients a day, at least half of them are in some state of active trauma, past trauma, where they cannot resolve it, and they lack the means to access the therapies that they need. On a personal side, my husband is with the Counter Drug Terrorism Program here with the Air Force locally that flies out of the Des Moines Airport. So if you are interested in drug statistics and what they are obtaining locally and in the Midwest, the DEA and the Des Moines Police Chief, they fly on all the missions with them. And from what I understand, and this is not what he told me, but this war on drugs is about a dopamine-seeking position, and that they're seeking this high, this stimulant, and that's what causes the rage. It causes the terror, it puts you into fight or flight, especially as you're coming out of it, and that's where the risk for doing something dangerous happens. And if you read on dopamine, if you read something as simple as the book Dopamine Nation, there's a balance between dopamine, and once you get that super big high, it drops, and you have to seek more and more and more. And then pain is associated with it, so as you're coming off of the dopamine, your pain is so high. That's not what psilocybin does. That's not what the psychedelics do. They actually help balance that and help you essentially release that prison that they are in their minds. And, my practice is getting ready to introduce psychedelic medication therapy. It's called Spravato. It's a nasal ketamine spray. This thing is $1,100 a treatment. It takes at least 13 treatments and requires significant integration. Now, I'll take it if you're not going to help push this along and legalize and reduce the substance 1 categorization, but at the same time is inaccessible to patients. Medicaid, the state of Iowa insurances aren't going to cover that. So I know where you guys stand. I legislate only on topic issues, not with party lines, and I know you are all passionate about your constituents, but not offering access to something like this and keeping it criminalized is systematically denying people the access to healing and to live within their authentic self.
And just to be, you said you're offering a nasal ketamine that's a 13 treatment regimen at $1,100 per treatment?
Yes, we will be.
That sounds expensive.
Yep.
And just in your general view that maybe a half of the patients you see total could benefit from some sort of trauma alleviating therapy?
Half of my personal patient load, yes. I have 6 partners, 4 of us are family practice, 2 are psych. Their entire rosters are filled with a trauma-informed practice. So they see 40 a week, 160. So at least 500 of our 1,000 patients per month are in some form of trauma, incapacitated, malfunctioning.
And so then again, you're just further underscoring this kind of medical concept that the trauma, emotional trauma that a person undergoes can therefore be connected to, say, physical ailments and physical disease.
Absolutely. That's, if you even peek at my social media, that's what I talk about. The root cause of illness is some type of trauma that's harbored somatically within the body. And so that's where all these mental health diagnoses come. They're kind of crap in the end, because what we're doing is we're covering up trauma and events in your life that weren't processed correctly.
Have you ever faced any malpractice complaints or any licensure complaints?
Well, I get a lot of complaints. Walmart fined me $26,000 last year for my integrative approach. Like, I'm not scared.
Interesting, okay. That might be a topic for a different committee meeting, but very interesting nonetheless. Any other questions for Kara? Okay. Is anyone against the bill that wants to speak against the bill? All right, well, go ahead. If no one's going to speak against the bill, then I guess we have no choice but to move it forward. Oh, okay, you can go next. We definitely want to make sure you have an opportunity to speak.
Well, it's a tragedy that it's not available to my patients. I'm a licensed social worker.
Tell us your name.
My name is Tamara Bridgman, and I've been a licensed social worker since the mid-90s. And I've taken psilocybin, LSD, a bunch of them recreationally. And I'd be taking them this Thursday if I were going to see Bob Weir at CY Stevens.
Oh, great.
But aside from all the recreational use, when I was in my early 20s, first of all, nothing happened bad to anyone I was ever around. Every festival that I ever went to was peaceful. When you serve alcohol, that's when it gets violent. I have 3 points really to make, is that I'm a licensed social worker. I've worked at mental health at Iowa Lutheran, inpatient, outpatient, and what you see is a cyclical cycle of these antidepressants. People don't move forward. They kind of stay numb. And then they cycle in and out. I mean, you know their names that come to Iowa Lutheran Access Center. And so as I think that Rick said, elimination, and I don't know if you heard that, but 70% in the study can eliminate their suicidal ideation. I've never heard any antidepressant, any study, pharmaceutical, big pharma say they can't eliminate the symptom. So I also have a 14 and a 17-year-old. And the other day, my daughter said she was going to kill herself. And I don't have the option right now in this state to deliver the medication that I think can help her, which is psilocybin.
What age?
What?
You said 14?
14 and 17. I have never seen anything like this since 1995. There's nothing. So I have these children, but I also have a 75-year-old mother who was just diagnosed with mild dementia. Went to Dr. Bender's office, who I used to work for. I was the social worker for Dr. Bender. And my mother, we went to the office. She was diagnosed with mild dementia, and they gave her Aricept, which has been around since the 90s, because I worked for Dr. Bender. So I said, isn't there anything else? I mean, there's nothing else, you guys. Nothing will stop it. It will always progress. It's a progressive disease. But in October of 22, Paul Stamets did a study called With the Stamets Stack, and improved motor and memory.
Sorry,
in people
Thank you,
55
Tamara.
and older.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. All right, let's hear from the department.
Old people, you gotta help the old people.
Good afternoon. I'm Josie Wagler with the Department of Public Safety. We have some concerns with the bill. With me today, I have Ryan Moore, who is the Assistant Director for our Division of Narcotics Enforcement. So he will kind of elaborate further on those.
First of all, I'd like to thank you folks for coming. I know the big bag boogeyman just walked in because he's a cop, all right? That's not the case. I understand this is your testimony. I completely agree. You know what? Pharmaceutical drugs, we deal with it every day. And where we're at now today is with the counterfeit pharmaceuticals that are getting laced with fentanyl. And it's obviously a bad thing, a deadly thing. And we're seeing kids, adults, whatever, you may be. But on my side of the fence, and I get it, the responsible use or the user, as you folks have testified to, is not the problem. The problem is the other side of the fence that we deal with on the criminal side. Last year, I found it kind of interesting because we don't always deal with psilocybin that much. You know, you hear about the fentanyl, the methamphetamine, you know, the hard drugs, or the so-called hard drugs. Last year, so I ran stats for the last 3 years with just D&E seizures. 2022, we seized 1.37 pounds of psilocybin mushrooms. 1.37 pounds. 21, 9.94 pounds. 22, 63 pounds. That's a huge uptick. And 2020, calendar year 2020, 1.37 pounds. 2021, 9.94 pounds. 22, 63 pounds. So that, my math is what, 7 times more? This is on the legal side now, mind you. But obviously there is a market for it illegally. And
so then, if current trends continue, you would anticipate confiscating over 400 pounds of psilocybin this year?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I get where you're going, but, you know, I'm just showing that there is an uptick. And
Is there a point though?
Hold on, you're out of order. Go ahead.
okay, so I mean that's just stats. I mean and you can throw any, you know, and everybody can sit and say you can twist stats however you want. That's correct. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say it's good, it's bad, but on the, you know, on our side of the fence, what we deal with on the criminal side is people that are hallucinating, that are out of order, they're committing crime, they're committing violent crime, and that's what's our concerns. And we have enough societal problems the way it is with, you know, drug abuse, violence.
So I guess, do we have any statistics on, you know, people that have been engaging in violent crime or violent criminality that is connected to the use of psilocybin? Do we have anything that kind of laser focused?
I mean, here's my thing. I mean, we don't drug test these people when they're committing criminal acts or whatever. They're not very cooperative usually, so they're not going to tell you what they're tripping on, what they're using, whatever it may be.
Well, to that is, what test is available that would detect the psilocybin presence in someone's physiology?
What test could we use?
Yeah, does such a test exist?
Yeah, no, not really, no.
Not really.
I mean, here's my thing. It's, to get down in the weeds that far is like kind of a waste of time. I mean, if somebody killed their wife or their husband, we don't go off as far as like, hey, this guy's high on methamphetamine, whatever it may be.
So I guess let me ask it this way, if I may. So let's say hypothetically, I'm sitting at my legislative desk and I use a half of a gram of psilocybin for a bona fide religious use, and I go over to Representative Turek and give him a half a gram of psilocybin for a bona fide medical purpose. What crime have I committed, and what is the criminal sanction I'd be facing?
If you used it, or you're in possession of it.
Let's say I used it for a bona fide religious purpose, and I distributed it to a fellow representative for a bona fide medical purpose.
I guess you'd be in possession of psilocybin mushrooms.
With intent to distribute, though, right?
I suppose at that level, I don't know too many county attorneys that are going to prosecute a half gram.
But that is current. That's put in a felony range, right? Class D felony.
Allegedly, yes.
Okay.
If I was to speak like everyday world, you're not getting prosecuted for a half gram for delivery. It's not happening.
You can go to jail, though.
You're not going to jail.
Ma'am, please.
You're not going to. The myth of people our prisons full of marijuana users and mushroom users, that's a myth.
Right.
That is a complete myth. They're in there for something else. Maybe they are a user, but they're in there for something else. I mean, that whole stance is.
Well, and that was my, when I was looking at some of the criminal records, is that I guess it'd be very rare for someone to be prosecuted solely on psilocybin. Oftentimes it's possession of marijuana, including possession of psilocybin, and the case in Fairfield was possession of methamphetamine in conjunction. So it's just kind of interesting, you know, what's the difference between charging someone with possession and intent to distribute methamphetamine, and then you add psilocybin onto that. I guess, you know, for my purposes, I'd be very interested to see how we could really isolate psilocybin on its own and really see what criminal activity flows exclusively from the psilocybin.
And usually that is a lesser charge. I mean, I'm going to be straight honest with you. It's usually a lesser charge that either gets dismissed down the road in our criminal justice system, and especially on the state side. You're probably looking at a possession charge at best.
I guess it's just interesting to me because I think, as some of the testimonies revealing, is we have a growing segment, as well as indicated by the amount that's being confiscated, a growing segment of Iowans that are experimenting on their own, you know, without fear of criminal repercussion. So it's just kind of, it's at least an interesting environment from my perspective, where a lot of citizens are taking advantage of this on their own accord and being able to kind of fly under the radar, so to speak, so.
And that's, you know, that's their right. I mean, obviously, they face the repercussions of possibly getting caught in, you know, criminal charges. I mean, it's just like anything else. You can say it about methamphetamine, you can say it about heroin, you can say it about fentanyl, you can say it about marijuana.
I could lose my kids.
Ma'am, please. Yeah, we'll have to kill the bill if people speak out of turn. This is a meeting.
That's all right, I'll take my money to Colorado.
Okay, see ya. All right. I guess the other element, so if we decriminalize psilocybin from Iowa code, it would still be a penalty at the federal level. So I guess what actually would change if Iowa deleted psilocybin from our criminal code? What would change? Would you be unable to, say, prosecute someone under?
No, we can still, because so.
Right, you can still enforce the
still
federal
enforce
statute.
the federal law. It's
Yeah.
just like marijuana. I mean, you can, it's one way or the other. Some states it's legal, some states it's not.
So what changes if we pass this bill? People still wouldn't be able to buy or sell it. They could still potentially be prosecuted under the federal statute. What changes?
Nothing.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to share?
That's all I got.
Sure. Any other questions for the department? Okay, we have time for a little bit more testimony. So we'll take 2 or 3 more people if you want to come up and give your 2 minutes, and try to keep it on subject to psilocybin. Try to speak on personal experience and avoid any of the hypothetical conjecture.
Hi, my name is Haley Nischel. I'm a single mom and a yoga teacher, meditation teacher. I'm currently experiencing an episode of depression. I've experienced depression my entire life. A month ago, I returned to antidepressants and experienced debilitating side effects. So I forego the antidepressants to microdose, taking a very sub-perceptual amount of psilocybin every day. I can't feel it.
What is that dose? What do you define a microdose as?
0.15 grams.
Okay.
And within 2 weeks, my suicidal ideations were gone, and I'm more active, I have more energy. The depression is still there, but the lift that's given me and the removal of the suicidal ideations has been life-changing.
And do you know when would, for you, in your experience, when would the dosage cease to be a microdose? When would it become a dose that would affect your perception? Do you know?
I think that's different for everyone based on their own physiology.
Yeah,
For
so-
me personally, probably around 0.5.
0.5? Okay.
Nope.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Hi, I'm Susie Scher from the Office of Drug Control Policy.
Oh.
We're registered undecided on the bill, but I want to reiterate what Ryan said, and thank you for coming and sharing your testimony. We also have concern that we're getting ahead of ourselves. We understand that there are clinical trials happening right now, and we're really interested in seeing what comes from that. And we think we just need to slow down a little bit, follow the science, see what the clinical trials say before we move ahead on it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Chad Timblin. I'm a citizen of Fairfield, Iowa, and I'd like to read a
Oh,
brief
no kidding.
statement from my phone. I'd like to start by sincerely thanking everyone who is participating in this ongoing conversation. I'll be the first to admit that I definitely don't have all of the answers, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to listen and learn from others' perspectives. Schedule I substances are said to have no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Clinical trials have demonstrated that psilocybin and psilocin fit neither of these descriptions. For example, a study by Johns Hopkins medicine researchers found that psilocybin-assisted therapy relieved major depressive disorder symptoms in some patients for at least 1 year. And in 2018, the FDA designated psilocybin-assisted therapy as a breakthrough therapy due to its potential to treat major depression more effectively than any of the currently available treatments. All House File 240 does is remove psilocybin and psilocin from the list of substances classified as Schedule I controlled substances under Iowa's Uniform Controlled Substances Act. While decriminalization does not equal legalization, I hope that descheduling psilocybin or rescheduling it to Schedule II makes it easier for scientists in Iowa to research the promising potential of psilocybin-assisted therapy. It's my understanding that physicians are able to prescribe Schedule 2 through Schedule 5 substances with a valid DEA license. So if psilocybin is descheduled or rescheduled in Iowa, it could allow many Iowans who are suffering from treatment-resistant depression and other mental health maladies to be helped with psilocybin-assisted therapy right here in Iowa, instead of having to leave the state or even the country to get treatments. There are many other U.S. states that have decriminalized and or legalized psilocybin that we can look to as models, but ultimately we have to do what is best for our own state and citizenry. I'm confident that Iowa citizens, lawmakers, medical experts, and others can work together to figure out the best path forward for Iowa and Iowans. There are a lot of details that will have to be considered, and decriminalizing psilocybin and psilocin is an important early step in the broader project of correcting outdated and unscientific drug classifications that unnecessarily criminalize decent citizens who are
Thank you,
seeking
Chad. Thank you.
relief from life-threatening conditions. One more quote I'd like to end with.
All right, go ahead.
This is a quote from Shane Pennington, a lawyer who specializes in drug policy. There are only two practical differences between Schedules 1 and 2 under the Controlled Substances Act. First, Schedule 2 substances may be made available for prescription, whereas Schedule 1 substances may not. Second, Schedule 1 substances are subject to research restrictions that don't apply to substances in any other schedule. If decades of experience under the CSA have taught us anything, it is that drug policy should promote, not deter, science and research. Schedule 1 is anti-science. It delays and sometimes blocks outright access to life-saving therapies. We know Schedule 1 is causing real and completely preventable harm to untold numbers of innocent people. How long will we continue to let them suffer? Thank you, everyone, for being here and for considering this
Thank you,
important
Chad.
matter.
You said you came from Fairfield?
Fairfield.
How long you live in Fairfield for?
November 2020, came from California to
Wonderful.
Fairfield.
And it's working out pretty well for you?
Love it there.
Okay, that's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. I guess we'll just open it up to discuss among the legislators. Skylar, what do you think? You had a really great comment when we were talking about it a couple weeks ago. Okay, I just want to share that in the broader public safety committee. Appreciate it. All right, so we're going to sign this bill forward. It is funnel week. This is a big discussion. The bill is a big step to completely decriminalize, so I don't expect much movement prior to Friday. But obviously, this is a significant step forward, and this is the third time, so please just continue to be involved. Please, just continue to document your experiences. Obviously, operate at a very high level of self-awareness and self-responsibility of what you're dealing with. But to the extent that it is helping you, please feel free to write that down and share with your local newspapers, legislators, policymakers, local boards of health. So we really appreciate this discussion, and I think it's something we all need to take some responsibility for, of how we're going to address the unhealed traumas that seem to be plaguing our world. So thank you, everyone, for coming, and we look.
Representative, could you explain what the next process is?
Oh, so we're going to funnel it into public safety. Usually each caucus, well, you could probably explain it better than I could, Rick. You've been around a little bit longer. Could you please explain that?
It's assigned to any committee candidate, but public safety is where it came out of. So there is another public safety committee meeting this week. It's possible it could be assigned to that committee and actually voted on, voted out of that committee. That makes it funnel-proof, and it would be sent to the Senate. It's up to the chair of the public safety committee, I guess, to decide whether or not they want to bring it forward. Agree?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. So, I mean, while you're here, feel free to reach out to members of the Public Safety Committee, let them know your position, and let them know what you're willing to do as self-respecting Iowans to see this issue through, and just continue to be in communication with us. And we'll face whatever criminal sanctions that may accompany this. We'll face that as we come, and we're happy to equip you with the best legal resources available to assert your full rights under the law. Is that good? All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.